Welcome once again to another edition of Freedom Friday. I'm Conroy Reynolds. The year was 1903, just a little over 30 years after the Emancipation Proclamation in the United States. A young Antiguan, grandson of a formerly enslaved person, embarked on a ship bound for the United States. He was one of the earliest examples of what became a tradition of young black intellectuals from the Caribbean traveling to this country to further their education and play a part in its development. His name, Samuel Benjamin Jones. This episode of Freedom Friday will examine the impact of the life and legacy of this brilliant Antiguan, whose work as an educator, physician, researcher, historian, magistrate, and public intellectual made a tremendous impact, not only on American society, but also Britain, the Caribbean, and the world. Welcome to a new series on Freedom Friday. We're calling it Hidden Giants of the Caribbean, and we begin our series with Samuel B. Jones. Samuel Benjamin Jones was born in Antigua on April 25, 1874, a little over 60 years after the abolition of slavery in the British West Indies. His parents were James Shepherd and Mary Ann Sophia Edwards Jones. His father died when he was still a boy, and so his grandfather joined his mother to raise him. His grandfather was a formerly enslaved man who knew the importance and value of education, and therefore strongly encouraged young Samuel in his educational pursuits. It appears he was an outstanding student from very early on, because by the age of 9, he won a scholarship to the prestigious Antigua Grammar School. From 1889 to 1893, he attended the grammar school, distinguishing himself. And by 1894, at 20 years old, he entered Codrington College in Barbados as an Anglican diocesan student. This meant that the church already recognized young Jones as one of the colony's most promising young intellectuals. That recognition likely opened doors to Codrington College, the principal institution for training Anglican clergy and teachers in the British West Indies, and then to later studies connected with Durham University in the United Kingdom, and eventually the University of London, which we will come to shortly. Without it, it is highly unlikely that a poor grandson of a formerly enslaved man would have had the funds to be a paying student. In this regard, Samuel is part of a surprisingly common pattern among elite Afro-Caribbean professionals of the late 19th century. Churches, especially at that time, the Anglican, Methodist, Moravian, and Presbyterian traditions, provided one of the few structured pathways through which talented Black Caribbean students could obtain advanced education. Other religions would follow later on. As a result, many future physicians, lawyers, educators, and public officials first emerged from church-sponsored educational networks before pursuing secular professional careers. These faith communities helped cultivate a generation of globally influential Caribbean leaders. While this educational pathway was heavily influenced by traditional European ideas and assumptions, some of which promoted an inferior assessment of Black intelligence, it did provide astute students like Samuel Jones with the tools to critique the very system that shaped their educational journey. In Samuel's case, he became an effective and articulate proponent of Black development and resilience. Even among his peers at this early age, Samuel was an intellectual standout. After graduating Codrington, he earned 2 bachelor's degrees from Durham University in England and the University of London. By any estimate, his academic record was exceptional for the 1890s. From 1896 to 1902, James pursued his teaching career as an assistant master at Antigua Grammar School, his old secondary school. While there, he completed the intermediate examination toward the LLB at the University of London. And in 1903, at the age of 29, he found himself on a ship bound for the United States. When Samuel Jones arrived in the United States in 1903, he entered a nation that had largely abandoned the promises of Reconstruction after emancipation and was firmly in the era historians often described as the nadir, the lowest point of American race relations. The Reconstruction period ended in 1877 with the withdrawal of federal troops from the South. During Reconstruction, African Americans voted in large numbers. Black legislators served in state governments and Congress. Public education expanded. Civil rights were protected, at least in principle, by federal enforcement. However, progress in racial justice is often met with a violent and suppressive response if the majority feels threatened. And this is precisely what happened. By 1903, much of the progress that had been made had been dismantled. Jim Crow was now becoming fully entrenched. So when Jones arrived, segregation laws governed nearly every aspect of public life. Black voting rights had been effectively eliminated throughout much of the South. Racial violence and lynchings were widespread. Black professionals faced enormous barriers despite their education. The 1903 South was, in many respects, becoming more restrictive for African Americans than it had been 30 years earlier. So did Jones know he was entering a United States where segregation was now backed by federal constitutional doctrine? We're not sure how much he knew. However, although the political climate deteriorated, the same period saw remarkable growth in Black institutions. Historically Black colleges expanded. Black churches became stronger. Organizations like the National Medical Association, founded in 1895 after Black physicians were excluded from the American Medical Association in many places, flourished. Black physicians, educators, lawyers, and business leaders built parallel institutions to serve communities excluded from white institutions. Samuel Jones would play his part, contributing to these important initiatives to elevate African-descended people in America. His first position in his new country was as a teacher of economics and Latin at St. Augustine's School in North Carolina. At the same time, he began his studies toward a medical degree. You could not stop this brother. And in 1909, he received his MD from Illinois Medical College in Chicago. He then won appointment as resident physician and director of the academic department at the Agricultural and Technical College, which today is North Carolina Agricultural and Technical University in Greensboro. He was also a professor of mathematics and was considered one of the university's earliest foreign-born faculty members. His university colleagues referred to him as the man with a string of degrees. In 1911, Loyola University awarded him an honorary MD. Imagine the intellectual accomplishments which would lead a major American university to confer this honor on a Black person at that time. Of course, Jones became an active member of the Black National Medical Association and served as chairman of its Hookworm Commission. In 1915, the publication Who's Who of the Colored Race in America lists Samuel Benjamin Jones as resident physician at A&T, a member of the Church of England and the American Academy of Political and Social Science, the American Sociological Society, and the Convocation of the University of London. A defining feature of Jones's life was his passion for Black empowerment and improvement. He encouraged Black folks to learn their history. The historic St. Kitts bio page has a quote from him where he says, "I am firmly convinced that very little substantial progress can be made by any race which has not learned to reverence its forebears, no matter what they were, and to think of them as men who had done heroic deeds, making the race great by their strong efforts in the past." He favored Black history written by Black authors, and by all accounts, possessed a library featuring such works. How fitting, then, that we should be studying his life as one of those men. In 1918, Dr. Jones returned to the Caribbean and spent the remainder of his life as a medical officer in St. Kitts and Anguilla. In Anguilla, he was also magistrate and coroner. He worked tirelessly to improve the lives of his people. He was instrumental in eradicating the dreaded smallpox in Anguilla. He often treated patients unable to pay for his services. In 1924, the British Crown, King George, appointed Dr. Samuel Jones member of the British Empire, MBE, recognizing his outstanding service as medical officer, magistrate, and coroner of Anguilla. In St. Kitts, he focused on some of the most pressing medical issues in the population, including syphilis and intestinal worms. Besides being a practitioner, he was also a researcher. He corresponded with British researchers and supplied specimens that became the basis of a published British scientific paper. He authored several articles in the Journal of the National Medical Association relating to Negro public health in the United States and the West Indies. Dr. Samuel Benjamin Jones was one of the most accomplished Afro-Caribbean professionals of his generation. Beyond his distinguished career in education and medicine, he appears to have been an author, historian, researcher, colonial administrator, public health reformer, wartime information officer, and participant in international scientific networks. He is a fitting representative of African-descended people who rose to the highest levels of education and professional practice within a few years after the abolition of slavery, when it was a criminal offense to teach someone like him to read, write, or even spell his name. Thank you for joining me on this week's Freedom Friday. We continue next week with another hidden giant of the Caribbean. Please remember to hit the like button if you find this content informative and useful, and add a comment. I appreciate everyone. This is Freedom Friday, where we tell the whole story.